Well, I left school when I was about 2.5 years at high school, then went in the office at Charleston Garage for about to the end of the year. Then I went under apprenticeship, so that would have happened in 41, 15, 66, 56. It was a good flood down the river. Then I went to further up the road, a bit closer, to Lawton Transport, where I worked for 12.5 years. And that was really an education, because starting back at the garage at Charleston, that was farm services, so you learnt everything. You learnt lathe work, welding, pulling bores, mechanicking. In them days you had to do diffs, you had to set up your own gearboxes and generators, no alternators then, and starter motors, so you virtually learnt a lot. You weren't a technician, you were a mechanic, and them days you couldn't go and buy anything from the second-hand yard or anything like that because you had to repair it.
So what was your first impression when you heard about Royal?
Well, I didn't want to know a thing about it because I'm a mechanic. They got tunnel vision, don't want to know anything about alternative.
So why was that?
Well, mechanics always think they know it all. And, that stuff there, and you didn't want to, there was that many of them around and that, so yeah, didn't want to do it. But then Murray kept pestering, and I eventually tried in an old Datsun 180B, and where I was working at that present time then was the Lenswood Coal Stores, and up a hill from there I only had it in the motor, and she just went up that hill.
So what's this machine?
It is what I classify as a friction machine. A lot of people refer to it as a Felix machine, but I first saw this when I was a mechanic. It would have been about second year, I reckon, when I was, it would have been when I was 16, 17 years old. This motor is pretty powerful. Enables me to do a fair bit because it is so powerful. And then here you've got a little disc they made up locally, Murray Bridge. Silver steel on the shaft, driven by a V-belt. That turns out as boat. And here you've got your bearing, no second-hand ones, probably out of a Caterpillar. So you put that in there, then you've got your tension wrench there, which measures the pressure you're putting on.
So that's your tension wrench?
That's your tension wrench, that comes down on there and you push on there.
Okay, so on the gauge you can see how much pressure you're actually applying to the bearing. Okay, great.
That's right.
Okay, so what does this test actually show you?
It just shows you how friction is reduced, which you'll see quite easy because I say it's unbelievable. First of all, we need a bit of oil in this little sump.
So what have we got here? We've got just standard oil, mineral oil.
Mineral oil,
Yep.
And that is going around there, bearing there.
60 foot-pound pretty much, yep. And so with basic oil, applying 60 pound to foot-pound of pressure actually stopped the actual spinning of the bearing.
Now to show that it is a metal conditioner, I've just turned that a quarter of a turn. We'll leave that surface there and show you the wear, what was on that bearing from that. We'll just go down again.
So 60 foot-pound again, and again it stopped. Okay, yep, great.
So I can show you the first one. You'll see that one, well, they're both about the same there, very
similar.
Very torn to bits and not a real good surface. It's sort of, if you put that under a microscope, it'll look pretty jagged, which would wear a bearing or something out pretty quick. Take 200 to 300 k's for it to condition the metal in a motor or gearbox or whatever, diff, because it uses the oil as a means to transport the oil around to condition the metal. That'll be up to the 60 foot-pounds, I would say.
Yep. So you've applied 60 foot-pound of pressure, and you can actually stop and start this now with the Royal added, whereas it was actually stopping and seizing without any Royal in it. And you can see from the amp even the 60 pound of pressure is very, very, very small amount of load on the motor, which is shown on the amp. Amazing. It's still running, very little load on the amp meter, and now at 150 foot-pounds we've still got full operation, it's still operating.
It does get hard on the hand.
Amazing.
Too good. Now that surface there you'll see is fairly nice and shiny. Give her another quarter of a turn. the oil still in that, in the oil. Take a little while again to condition that bit of metal there.
So at 110 foot-pounds already, very little load on the amps on the engine, and still working no problems at all. So almost up to 150 foot-pound now, still no draw on the amperage. You can see it's right up on the end of the torque wrench, and just very little load coming up on the amperage, and it's still turning even though it's really hot.
It hasn't really done or worn that any further.
Wow, look at the scar in comparison. Yeah, amazing.
That is off shavings off the floor of using a cutting disc, metal cutting disc and a power saw. See it on the wheel. That's got the metal filings in there.
And that's loading up the full maximum on the torque wrench, and it's still running and drawing no amps. Wow. So what's the idea here? You're actually applying more leverage because it's a longer bar?
That there goes to about 150 with my leg over here and pressing down. I think that'd be getting close to 250 to 300 foot. We'll go again. Just listen, watch the amps. You'll see the amps come up. You'll also hear the motor start.
Okay, so you can see the amp meter go right up when the motor stalls, but it actually hasn't. It's not as a result of the bearing failing. It's actually because the motor's stalling. Is that correct?
It hasn't really broke through that conditioning. That's what it's sort of proving. So it's there for that. So once it's there, it'll stay there too for cold starts or whatever.
Wow. Without any oil at all?
Without the oil bath. So if your motor runs out of oil, you can do a fair trip.
So we're loaded up now to about 120 foot-pounds already. Still no draw on the amperage, and still running with no oil at all. Wow. See it's getting hot, and it's still running.
It will eventually break down, but I just want to show you that with all that pressure and those filings in there, that's what it's done to that bearing.
Wow.
That's how much it's worn.
In comparison to what? So if we go back to the previous one.
That was the first one we did where it stopped. And that was the second one. When I just turned it with the metal that had been picked up from that one, it was on the wheel, it dug in there too. But put the royal in and that conditioned it, you can see that by the thing, and that's how much she wore there with all that filings. Pressure, metal filings, and that up to about 200 or 250 to 300 foot-pound.
Amazing.
So to me, that proves that it's a metal conditioner and it reduces. That's a pretty old chainsaw. That one's about 50 years old, still cuts like a champion. You can see what friction that does on here.
Amazing.
If you can imagine that on the cutter bar, just what it does there too. So
you're a mechanic of over 50 years.
Yeah.
You were sceptical to start with.
Yeah.
You've now proved to in your own mind that the product works exceptionally well.
Like it is. Everybody's got choices. Whether it's your own health or your car. You can choose to use it or you can choose not to.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty good insurance.
Yeah, but you've proven in your own mind that this product absolutely works.
Yes, to me, like I say, I just, whatever it is, I'll use it.
And everything.
Yeah. Even my electric shaver. I mean, you don't smell too nice like after shave when you perhaps use it, but...